People tell you, you can't go. Stop thinking about college. And it breaks your heart. Some of the words and adjectives I would use to describe the FAFSA application process:
antiquated,
frustrating,
bureaucratic,
confusing,
burdensome, miserly,
intimidating,
the most heart-wrenching and miserable process that you would probably ever go through in your life.
At 23, after working professionally, I decided it was time for me to continue my education.
I was a reservist in Chicago, serving in the 379th Chemical Company. I decided to go to college because I was working a lot of construction jobs. I was 27 years old. I lived on my own, and I just had no idea how I was gonna pay for it.
I come from an immigrant family. Neither of my parents even went to high school. After I finish community college, I will be the first to go to a 4-year university.
I am a first-generation college student from a lower-income family, and my parents, they didn't go to college. They didn't really understand the application.
My challenge is really centered around not being at that cutoff age of 24. I was unable to apply independently, and that presented some barriers for me.
I feel for students. On a good day, it's complicated. On a bad day, it's almost insurmountable for them.
There's far too many barriers right now, so there's this continued stress.
While you're studying, you're like, okay, should I do this because I don't know if it's gonna get paid for?
It puts fear in people. They're not familiar with the process.
And either don't apply at all because they think the process is too burdensome, or they start to apply and then end up giving up. And there are lots of students out there that end up leaving aid on the table that they would have been eligible for.
The form that we ask students to fill out for federal aid is actually longer than a tax form.
The FAFSA application is over 100 questions long.
There's a significant number of questions that less than 1% of the population actually has to answer.
I have been working in financial aid for 37 years. I still have to go back and look things up.
And then as you're going, you think you're done, and then you're not. You might have to do verification. You might have to go through additional paperwork.
It requires getting a tax transcript. It requires answering questions about your family makeup, your household size, multiple times in some cases if the student has applied to multiple colleges and institutions.
It just becomes a long and tedious, overwhelming process.
It creates further hurdles and puts that many more barriers up.
And then they feel like they must have done something wrong because why do you need additional backup documentation to prove what I already just put on the form?
It is burdensome for applicants, especially the low-income, first-generation students that we're really trying to get to.
The FAFSA is designed around a premise that students are 18 to 24 years old and they come from families where there are 2 biological parents living together and who are married.
That process was established lots and lots of years ago, and it has not been changed.
Student lives are much more complicated. They take different paths.
So recently we've had a lot of improvements to the student aid process, particularly some policy wins about using currently available tax data and encouraging filing earlier in the process in October.
Although we've seen some changes, there's just a long way that we can go.
You could make the first step of simplification, eliminating some of the questions that are on there
So that we are not asking questions of people about situations that do not apply to them.
make the process applicable to those that are attending different types of schools, full-time, part-time, traditional age student, returning adult.
And then on the back end, we can utilize information that the federal government already has so that applicants do not have to repeatedly provide the same information.
Simplified financial aid means that we as access advisors spend far less time talking about process and far more time actually advising students about what their careers will look like in the future.
We need to pull in more people who are not your traditional financial aid applicants. The process needs to be simpler so that they can successfully complete their college education and be part of the American workforce.
And this is a great way to do it, listening to our stories, asking us questions, and using that information to build a better process. There have been great strides made, but we're not there yet.